The night Ava Monroe signed away her freedom, she wore a dress that cost more than most people's cars, and understood, finally, that wealth could be the cruelest prison of all. Her father's empire had crumbled in 72 hours. A stranger now owned everything, including, it seemed, her future. The contract sat on mahogany older than her grandfather, ink still wet, terms she hadn't written but would live inside for God knew how long. And the man across the table? He wasn't smiling. He was waiting. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. Because what happened next changed everything Ava thought she knew about sacrifice, survival, and what it means to choose your own life. The first snowfall of December arrived 3 days early, which Ava Monroe decided was cosmically appropriate given that absolutely nothing else in her life was going according to plan. She stood at the second-floor window of the Monroe estate, former Monroe estate, she corrected herself bitterly, watching fat flakes settle on the circular driveway like uninvited guests at a funeral. Except this wasn't a funeral. This was supposed to be a celebration, an engagement party, according to the engraved invitations her father had somehow afforded to print, even as the walls closed in around them. Ava's reflection stared back at her from the antique glass. 20 years old, dark hair swept into an elaborate updo she hadn't chosen, wearing a champagne-colored cocktail dress she hadn't paid for, about to attend a party, celebrating a future she hadn't agreed to. The dress alone probably cost $4,000. She knew because she'd heard her mother on the phone with the boutique, voice honey-sweet and desperate, asking if they could possibly extend their account one more week. One more week, as if a week would matter now. Behind her, the bedroom door opened without a knock. Ava didn't turn around. She knew her mother's footsteps, quick, light, purposeful, the rhythm of a woman who'd spent 25 years managing a household and a husband's ambitions with equal precision. "Darling, you need to come downstairs." Margaret Monroe's voice carried the particular strain of someone trying very hard to sound normal. "Guests are arriving." "Guests?" Ava repeated, still watching the snow. "Is that what we're calling them?" "Ava." Sharper now. Margaret crossed the room, and Ava felt her mother's hand on her shoulder, surprisingly cold through the silk. "I know you're upset." "Upset?" Ava finally turned and saw her mother flinch at whatever expression she was wearing. "Mom, I'm not upset. I'm being sold." "Don't be dramatic." But Margaret's eyes were red-rimmed, her makeup precise in that way that meant she'd applied it carefully to hide evidence of crying. It's complicated, but your father has worked very hard to gamble away everything we have?" Ava heard her voice rising and didn't care. "To take out loans he couldn't repay? To build hotels nobody wanted in towns nobody visits? Which part did he work hard on? Exactly." Margaret's hand dropped. For a moment something raw crossed her face. Agreement, maybe, or shared fury, but she smoothed it away with the practiced ease of a woman who'd been smoothing things away for decades. "What's done is done," she said quietly. "Now we do what we must to survive." "We?" Ava shook her head. "I'm the one who has to marry a complete stranger. You and Dad get to keep living here. Keep your friends. Keep your lives. I'm the one being traded like property in some Victorian novel. It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" Ava demanded. "Explain it to me. Make it make sense." Margaret moved to the window, looking down at the arriving cars. A Tesla. A Mercedes. A Land Rover with ski racks, because of course these people had ski racks. Silver Ridge's elite coming to witness the Monroe family's carefully orchestrated salvation. "Your father made mistakes," Margaret said finally. "Bad investments. The Silver Ridge Resort project. He was so certain it would succeed. He borrowed against everything. The house, the business accounts, even my mother's trust." Her voice cracked slightly on that last part. "When the project failed, when the investors pulled out, we had nothing left. Less than nothing. We had debt that would have taken 20 years to repay. And that's if the creditors didn't force us into bankruptcy first." Ava had heard versions of this story over the past month, in whispered arguments through closed doors, in her mother's phone calls to lawyers, in her father's hollow-eyed silence at the dinner table. But hearing it stated so plainly still felt like a punch to the chest. "So you sold me," she said. "We made an arrangement," Margaret corrected. "Mr. Hale approached your father with a proposition. He paid off our debts, all of them. In return, you agree to a temporary marriage that helps him secure custody of his daughter. 2 years, Ava. Maybe less if the custody situation resolves sooner. And at the end, you walk away with a trust fund that will set you up for life. A temporary marriage to a man I've never met. A man who's, 40? Old enough to be my father? He's 42, Margaret said, as if 2 years made any difference. And he's been nothing but respectful in all our interactions. He's not asking for anything inappropriate. Separate bedrooms, Ava. You'd be housemates, essentially, partners on paper. And what does he get out of it? Really? Ava crossed her arms. Rich men don't pay off millions in debt out of charity. Margaret's expression shifted, something almost like respect flickering across her features. You're right to ask that. He's in a custody battle with his late wife's parents. They're arguing that he can't provide a stable, traditional home environment for his daughter, that a single father isn't enough. The marriage gives him exactly what he needs to counter that argument, a stable two-parent household. So I'm a prop, Ava said flatly, a living, breathing prop in his custody performance. You're a solution to both your problems, Margaret countered. He needs stability for his daughter. You need financial security and freedom from your father's debts. It's actually quite fair when you think about it. Fair, Ava repeated. Right, totally fair. Downstairs she heard the doorbell chime, heard voices in the foyer, heard the bright, false laughter of her father greeting guests, playing the gracious host even as he sold his daughter to settle his debts. The hypocrisy was stunning. I need you to understand something, Margaret said, turning to face her fully. This isn't just about money anymore. If we'd declared bankruptcy, if we'd lost everything, your father was talking about bridges, Ava, about insurance policies, about how we'd all be better off if he just... She stopped, pressed a hand to her mouth. Mr. Hale's offer saved more than our finances. Do you understand? Ava felt ice slide down her spine. She understood. She understood that her father's pride and shame had driven him to an edge she hadn't fully comprehended. She understood that her mother had been terrified enough to agree to anything that pulled him back. She understood that she was trapped. When do I meet him? She asked quietly. Margaret's shoulders sagged with relief. Tonight, he's coming to the party. Everything's been arranged. The contract is ready. The lawyers are standing by. If you agree, you'll sign tonight, and the wedding will be next week. Small ceremony, immediate legal protection for both of you. Next week. Ava laughed, but it came out wrong, sharp and broken. Of course. Why wait? Why give me time to think or plan or... The custody hearing is in 6 weeks, Margaret said. Mr. Hale needs the marriage to be established, believable. He needs time for his daughter to adjust, for you to integrate into their household. I know it's fast, but it's insane, Ava finished. It's absolutely insane, and you know it. Maybe... Margaret reached out, cupped Ava's face with both hands, the way she used to when Ava was small and scared of thunderstorms. But it's happening. And I need you to be brave, my darling girl. Braver than you've ever been. Can you do that? Ava wanted to say no, wanted to run, to refuse, to call a lawyer of her own and fight this whole arrangement. But when she looked at her mother's face, really looked, she saw the exhaustion, the fear, the desperate hope that this terrible solution might actually work. And she thought about her father, talking about bridges and insurance policies. I'll come downstairs, she said, but I'm not promising anything else. It was a lie, and they both knew it. She'd already lost. The moment her father's signature had dried on those loans, the moment he'd gambled their future on a resort that would never be built, she'd lost. This was just the paperwork making it official. Margaret kissed her forehead. Thank you. I know this isn't what you wanted, but Mr. Hale is a good man, Ava. I truly believe that. He's been fair, even generous. He could have demanded much worse terms. What a comfort, Ava said dryly. But she let her mother guide her out of the bedroom, down the familiar hallway with its family portraits and expensive wallpaper, toward the sounds of the party that wasn't really a party at all. The grand staircase swept down into the marble foyer, and Ava paused at the top, looking down at the gathering below. 20 or 30 people, all dressed in cocktail attire, all holding champagne flutes, all pretending this was a normal celebration. She recognized most of them. Her parents' social circle, Silver Ridge's upper crust, people who'd probably been gossiping about the Monroe family's downfall for weeks. Her father stood near the fireplace, and Ava's stomach clenched at the sight of him. Richard Monroe had always been larger than life. Big laugh, big personality, big dreams. But now he looked diminished, shoulders curved inward, smile too wide and too fixed, playing a role, pretending everything was fine. Their eyes met across the room and something passed between them. Apology, maybe, or shame, or just exhaustion. Ava looked away first. "There she is!" Her mother's voice rang out, bright and false. "Come down, darling." Every face turned toward her. Ava felt their gazes like physical weight, assessing, judging, curious. She lifted her chin and descended the stairs with all the grace her expensive education had drilled into her. If she was going to be a spectacle, she'd be a dignified one. She accepted champagne from a passing server, a young woman she recognized from town, someone who'd probably heard all the rumors, and took a long sip. It was excellent champagne, which somehow made everything worse. Even now, her parents were spending money they didn't have on appearances. "Ava, you look stunning," Mrs. Whitmore from the country club, all teeth and pearls. "Your mother says you'll be transferring schools. How exciting." Translation. Running away from your family's scandal? How predictable. "Possibly," Ava said neutrally. "Nothing's decided yet." "Well, I'm sure wherever you go you'll do wonderfully. The Monroe girls always land on their feet." Translation. You're a survivor, like your mother, trading dignity for security. Ava smiled and moved away before she said something she'd regret. She made it through 15 minutes of small talk, commenting on the weather, admiring someone's bracelet, laughing at a joke she didn't hear, before her mother appeared at her elbow again. "He's here," Margaret murmured, "in your father's study. He'd like to meet you before everything else." Ava's heart kicked against her ribs. Now? If you're ready. Was she ready? Would she ever be ready to meet the man who'd bought her future? "Fine," she said. "Let's get this over with." The study was at the back of the house, a wood-paneled room that smelled of old books and her father's cologne. The door was ajar, lamplight spilling into the darkened hallway. Ava paused outside, listening. Two voices. Her father's, nervous and too loud, and another, quieter, measured, with a slight roughness that suggested either disuse or exhaustion. "Just want her to understand that this is entirely her choice," the second voice was saying. "The debt is paid regardless. If she says no, that doesn't change." Of course, her father said quickly. "But I'm sure once you meet her, once you explain, Richard, I mean it. If she's not comfortable, the deal is off. I won't trap anyone into this." Ava pushed the door open. Both men turned. Her father looked relieved and anxious in equal measure, but Ava barely registered him because she was staring at the man who stood beside the mahogany desk, the man who'd paid millions to make her his wife. Grant Hale was not what she'd expected. She'd been imagining someone slick, corporate, the kind of wealthy businessman who wore expensive suits and collected wives like art. But the man in front of her wore dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the kind of build that suggested actual physical work, not just gym sessions. His hair was dark brown touched with gray at the temples, slightly too long, like he'd forgotten to get it cut. And his eyes were gray, startlingly light against tanned skin, and they studied her with an intensity that made Ava want to either run or stand straighter. "Miss Monroe," he said, and his voice was the same one she'd heard from the hallway, quiet, careful. "I'm Grant Hale. Thank you for agreeing to meet me." "I'm not sure I agreed to anything," Ava heard herself say, "but here I am." A flicker of something crossed his face. Amusement? Respect? "Fair enough. Would you like to sit?" "I'd rather stand." "All right." He glanced at her father. "Richard, would you give us a moment?" Her father looked startled. "Oh, I thought I should—" "Please," Grant said, and though his tone remained polite, there was steel underneath. "I'd like to speak with your daughter privately." Richard Monroe hesitated, then nodded and left, closing the door behind him. The click of the latch seemed very loud. Ava and Grant stood in silence, studying each other. He was older than her, obviously, old enough that the age gap felt like a chasm. But there was something in his expression, in the way he held himself, that didn't match the manipulative predator she'd been building in her mind. He looked tired, worn, like someone who'd been fighting too long and was down to his last reserves. "You're younger than I expected," Grant said finally. 20, Ava replied. "How old did you think I was?" "Your father said college senior. I assumed older." He rubbed a hand over his face. "Christ, 20. Too young for your purposes? Too young to be in this situation." He moved to the desk, picked up a leather folder, then set it down again without opening it. "Look, Miss Monroe." "Ava," she interrupted. "If we're going to do this, you should probably use my first name." "Ava," he amended. "I'm going to be direct with you because I think you deserve that much. I'm in a custody battle for my daughter. My late wife's parents are suing for guardianship, arguing that I can't provide adequate stability as a single father. They have expensive lawyers and a lot of influence in family court. I have a daughter who's already lost her mother and is terrified of losing me too." His voice roughened on that last part, and Ava saw his hands clench briefly before he forced them to relax. "I need to present a stable, traditional household," Grant continued. "A marriage does that. It's cynical and calculated, and I'm not proud of it, but it's the reality of the situation. Your father's financial troubles provided an opportunity for both of us. I pay off his debts, you agree to a legal marriage that lasts until the custody situation is resolved. 2 years maximum." "And then what?" Ava asked. "We divorce and go our separate ways?" "Yes. The contract includes a substantial trust fund for you, enough to cover graduate school, a house, whatever you want. You'd also have access to financial support during the marriage. I'm not asking you to live in poverty." "How generous." His jaw tightened. "I know how this sounds, but I want you to understand something crucial. I already paid your father's debts, past tense. Before this meeting, before you agreed to anything. If you walk out of here right now and tell me to go to hell, that doesn't change. Your family is clear." Ava felt like the floor had shifted beneath her. "What?" "The debts are paid," Grant repeated. "All of them. Your father's accounts are settled. So when I ask if you'll do this, I'm asking for a genuine choice, not coercion. You can say no without consequences." She stared at him, trying to process this. "Then why would I agree? If the debts are paid, if my family is safe, why would I still—" "Because I'm offering you something too," Grant said. "Financial independence from your parents. Freedom to finish your education without worrying about money. A contract that protects your interests and gives you legal recourse if I violate any terms. And—" He hesitated, then pushed forward, "because I think you're looking for a way out of this house, this life, this version of yourself that your parents built. I'm offering you an exit strategy." It was so accurate that Ava felt stripped naked. How did he know? How could he possibly— "I did my research," Grant said quietly, as if reading her mind. "I know you wanted to study environmental science at Berkeley. I know your father insisted you stay close, attend Silver Ridge College instead, major in something practical. I know you've been living in this house under their roof, their rules, their expectations for 20 years. This arrangement would give you distance, space to figure out who you are without them hovering." "In exchange for pretending to be your wife," Ava said. "Yes." "And living in your house?" "Yes." "With your daughter?" "Yes." He held her gaze. "Mia is 8 years old. She's smart, cautious, and she's been through hell this past year. She lost her mother to cancer, and now she's facing the possibility of losing her home, her school, her life as she knows it. I'm not asking you to be her mother, but I am asking you to be a stable, kind presence in her life. Can you do that?" Could she? Ava thought about 8-year-old her, small and scared and desperate for approval. Thought about what it would have meant to have someone consistent, someone who didn't demand anything except basic decency. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've never been around kids much." "Mia doesn't expect perfection. She expects honesty." Grant pulled out a photograph from his wallet, handed it to Ava. "That's her." Ava looked down at the picture. A small girl with Grant's gray eyes and a serious expression, holding what looked like a homemade science project, some kind of volcano mid-eruption. She wore a t-shirt with a dinosaur on it and had a gap in her front teeth. Something in Ava's chest twisted. "She looks like you," she said. "Unfortunately for her." Grant took the photo back with surprising gentleness. "She's the reason I'm doing this," The only reason. I don't like manipulating the court system. I don't like contract marriages. But I'll do whatever it takes to keep her safe and with me, even if that means asking a stranger to upend her entire life. There was something compelling about his honesty. He wasn't trying to charm her or seduce her or pretend this was anything other than what it was, a transaction born of desperation. "What happens if I say no?" Ava asked. "Nothing happens to you or your family. The debt stays paid. I find another solution for my custody situation, though I'll admit you were my best option." He smiled slightly, without humor. "If I say yes, what exactly am I agreeing to?" Grant retrieved the leather folder from the desk, opened it. The contract specifies everything. Legal marriage lasting up to 2 years. Separate bedrooms, no expectation of physical intimacy. You maintain your own financial accounts and have full access to a monthly allowance of $10,000 for personal expenses. I cover all household costs, tuition, insurance, everything. You're free to continue your education, work if you choose, maintain your own social life. $10,000 a month? Ava repeated. "That's more than fair," Grant said firmly. "You're providing a service that I need. You should be compensated appropriately." "It sounds like you're hiring me." In a sense, I am, but the marriage has to be legal and believable. We'd live in the same house, attend events together, present ourselves as a committed couple to the court and to me as grandparents. That requires a level of performance. Performance, Ava echoed. Like actors. Like partners who respect each other and are building a life together, which, legally, we would be. He handed her the folder. "Read it. Take your time. I've arranged for an independent lawyer to review it with you if you'd like. Someone not connected to me or your father. I want you to understand exactly what you're signing." Ava flipped through the pages. The legal language was dense, but the terms seemed clear. Marriage, cohabitation, financial support, custody assistance, divorce after 2 years or whenever the custody situation resolved, whichever came first. A trust fund of $2 million upon successful completion. $2 million. She could buy a house, travel, go to any graduate school she wanted, never depend on her parents or anyone else again. All she had to do was pretend to be in love with a stranger and act as a stepmother to a grieving 8-year-old. "Can I ask you something?" Ava looked up from the contract. "Of course." "Why me? You're clearly wealthy enough to find someone, I don't know, more suitable. Someone older, someone with experience with kids, someone who actually wants this. Why seek out my father's debt and engineer this whole arrangement?" Grant was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "Because you're not doing this for money," he said finally. "You're doing it because your family needs you to. That tells me something about your character. Someone who only wanted money would be easy to buy, but harder to trust. I need someone I can trust around my daughter." "You don't know me," Ava pointed out. "I could be terrible. I could be cruel or selfish or—" "You could be," Grant agreed. "But I don't think you are. Call it instinct." "That's a hell of a gamble for instinct. My whole life is a gamble right now." He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "Look, Ava, I'm not going to lie to you. This situation isn't ideal for either of us. But I think we can make it work. I think we can help each other and come out the other side better off than we are now. And I think—" he paused. "I think you're stronger than your parents give you credit for. Strong enough to do this." It was a calculated compliment, and Ava knew it, but it still landed. Nobody had called her strong in a very long time. "I need to think about it," she said. "Take all the time you need. But I should tell you, the custody hearing is scheduled for January 15th. If we're going to do this, the marriage should happen soon, next week at the latest." "Next week," Ava repeated numbly. "I know it's fast. It's insane." "Yes," Grant agreed simply. "It is. But that doesn't make it wrong." Ava looked at him, really looked at him, tried to imagine living in his house, eating breakfast across from him, attending school events with him, lying to judges and social workers and maybe even to that serious-eyed little girl about the nature of their relationship. Tried to imagine saying no and watching her father's face when she told him she'd refused. "I'll give you my answer tomorrow," she said. Grant nodded. "That's fair. Do you want to meet Mia first? It might help you decide." "You brought her here?" "She's in the car with her grandmother, my mother," he clarified quickly. I didn't want to overwhelm you, but if you'd like to meet her briefly, we could arrange that. Meet the child whose life would depend on Ava's performance. Meet the reason this was all happening. Okay, Ava heard herself say. Yes, I'd like to meet her. Grant pulled out his phone, sent a quick text. They'll come to the side entrance, more private. They left the study and walked through the house in silence. Ava was hyper-aware of him beside her, his height, his quiet presence, the way he moved with a kind of careful control. This was the man who would be her husband. The word felt alien in her mouth. The side door opened to a covered portico where a black SUV was parked. A woman in her 60s got out of the passenger side. Elegant, silver-haired, with the same gray eyes as Grant. His mother, clearly. And then the back door opened, and a small figure climbed out. Mia Hale was tiny for 8, all sharp elbows and knobby knees under a purple winter coat. She had dark hair in 2 braids and wore glasses that kept sliding down her nose. She looked at Ava with those serious gray eyes and didn't smile. Mia, this is Ava Monroe, Grant said gently. Ava, my daughter Mia. Hi, Ava said, suddenly nervous. What did you say to a child in this situation? Hi, Mia replied. Then, with devastating directness, Are you going to marry my dad? Grant's mother made a small sound of dismay, but Grant just crouched down to his daughter's level. We talked about this, remember? Ava and I are discussing it. Nothing's decided yet. But you want her to, Mia said. It wasn't a question. I do, Grant admitted, but only if she wants to as well. It has to be both people's choice. Mia studied Ava with an intensity that made her want to squirm. Do you like science? The girl asked finally. What? Science. Do you like it? Yes, Ava said, caught off guard. I do. I wanted to major in environmental science, actually. What's that? It's studying how humans interact with nature, how we can protect ecosystems and reduce pollution and help endangered species. Mia's expression shifted, interest flickering across her face. Like climate change? Exactly, like climate change. That's good, Mia said with a decisive nod. You need to know about real things, not just shopping and stuff. Ava bit back a laugh. I agree completely. Okay. Mia turned to her father. I think she's okay. Grant's mother pressed a hand to her mouth, clearly trying not to smile. Grant himself looked somewhere between amused and exasperated. High praise, he murmured to Ava. Then to Mia. Thank you for that thorough evaluation. Now back in the car. It's cold. Will I see you again? Mia asked Ava. Maybe, Ava said carefully. I'm still thinking about everything. Okay, think fast, though. Dad says we need to... She glanced at Grant, who'd gone very still. I mean, it would be good if you decided soon. Mia, Grant said quietly. What? It's true. Grant's mother took Mia's hand. Come on, sweetheart. Let's give them some privacy. She met Ava's eyes over Mia's head, and something passed between them. A question, maybe, or an assessment. Then she guided Mia back to the car. Ava and Grant stood in silence as the SUV pulled away. She's... Ava searched for the right word. A lot? Grant supplied. Direct. That too. He sighed. Her mother's death changed her. She used to be more carefree. Now she needs to understand everything, control what she can. The therapist says it's normal. She's in therapy? Twice a week. It helps. He looked at Ava. I know this is overwhelming, but that's the reality. You'd be entering a household that's still grieving, still learning how to function. It won't be easy. Nothing about this is easy, Ava said. No, he smiled slightly. But if it helps, Mia likes you. That's not nothing. They walked back inside. The party sound seemed louder now, laughter and voices echoing through the halls. Ava's other life, the one where she made different choices. I should get back, she said. They'll wonder where I am. Of course. Grant pulled a business card from his pocket. My number. Call or text any time. And Ava? He waited until she met his eyes. Whatever you decide, I respect it. No pressure, no manipulation. This is your choice. She took the card, felt the expensive weight of it. Tomorrow, she promised. I'll let you know tomorrow. That's all I ask. Ava left him standing in the hallway and made her way back to the party. Found her mother immediately. Margaret had clearly been watching for her. Well? Her mother asked urgently. What did you think? What did she think? That Grant Hale wasn't what she'd expected. That his daughter was heartbreaking and strange and oddly compelling. That the contract was fair, almost absurdly so. That she could feel the walls closing in, and this arrangement might be the only exit she'd get. I'm thinking about it, Ava said. Her mother deflated slightly but nodded. That's good. Take your time, darling. But there wasn't time, was there? There was next week or never. There was 2 years of performance or a lifetime of wondering what if. Ava took another glass of champagne and tried to focus on the party, but her mind kept returning to the study, to the contract, to Grant's gray eyes and Mia's serious expression. Are you going to marry my dad? The question echoed through her thoughts as the evening wore on, as guests congratulated her on an engagement that didn't exist yet, as her father avoided her eyes and her mother kept touching her shoulder like she might disappear. At 11, the last guests finally left. Ava helped the catering staff clean up, ignoring her mother's protests, because she needed something to do with her hands, needed to delay the inevitable conversation. But finally, the house was empty and quiet, and her parents stood in the foyer looking at her with identical expressions of desperate hope. Ava, her father started. About tonight. Don't. She cut him off. Please don't apologize or explain or try to justify it. I can't do this right now. But you'll think about Mr. Hale's offer? Margaret pressed. You'll seriously consider it? Ava looked at them, her parents, the people who'd raised her and controlled her and ultimately failed her. They looked old suddenly, worn down by debt and shame and the weight of their own choices. And she realized that Grant was right. She was looking for an exit. Had been looking for one since she was old enough to understand that her life belonged to her parents' ambitions more than to herself. I'll think about it, she said. Now I'm going to bed. She climbed the stairs without waiting for their response, walked into her pristine bedroom with its designer furniture and expensive art, and closed the door. Then she pulled out Grant's business card and stared at it for a long time. $2 million. 2 years. One grieving 8-year-old and her desperate father. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Grant. No pressure, but if you have questions, I'm available. Ava typed and deleted 3 different responses before finally settling on, How do you know this will work? His reply came quickly. I don't, but I know what happens if I do nothing. I lose my daughter. Sometimes the uncertain path is still the best option available. She sat on her bed, still wearing the $4,000 dress, and let the weight of everything settle over her. Tomorrow, she would give him an answer. Tomorrow, she would choose between the life she had and the one she might build with a stranger. Tomorrow, she would decide if she was brave enough or desperate enough to bet her next 2 years on a contract marriage and a little girl who liked science and needed someone steady in her shattered world. But tonight, she let herself grieve the fantasy she'd been carrying, the one where she went to Berkeley, studied what she loved, built a life on her own terms without debt or contracts or arrangements. That girl was gone. The question was, who would she choose to become instead? Ava looked at her reflection in the vanity mirror, 20 years old, trapped, terrified, and somehow still standing. Think fast, Mia had said. So she did. She picked up her phone and typed, I want to meet with the independent lawyer tomorrow morning if possible, and I have more questions. Grant's response, Of course. I'll arrange everything. Thank you for considering this seriously. She didn't respond, just set the phone down and began removing the pins from her elaborate updo, letting her hair fall around her shoulders. In the morning, she would read contracts and ask questions and try to find all the ways this could go wrong. But right now, in this moment, she let herself imagine a different future. One where she had money of her own, space from her parents, a purpose beyond being someone's perfect daughter. One where maybe, just maybe, she could figure out who Ava Monroe actually was beneath all the expectations and obligations. The snow was still falling outside her window, covering everything in white. A blank slate, a fresh start, or a beautiful lie covering the same broken ground. She'd find out soon enough. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old coffee, and Ava sat across from a woman named Patricia Chen, who looked like she could dismantle a contract with her eyes closed. "This is actually quite fair," Patricia said, flipping through the pages for the third time. Her reading glasses were perched on her nose, and she'd made small notations in the margins with a mechanical pencil. "Surprisingly so. I've seen prenuptial agreements that were far more predatory, and those were between couples who claimed to love each other." Ava wrapped her hands around the coffee mug Patricia's assistant had provided. It had gone cold 20 minutes ago, but she needed something to hold. "What's the catch?" "The catch is that you have to actually do it," Patricia said bluntly. "Live with him, integrate into his household, convince a family court judge that this marriage is legitimate. That's not easy, Miss Monroe. People underestimate how difficult it is to maintain a long-term deception, especially when there's a child involved. Children see things adults miss." "I met his daughter," Ava said. "Briefly." "And?" "She asked if I liked science." Patricia smiled slightly. "Smart kid. Testing if you were substance or just window dressing." She set the contract down, folded her hands. "Let me be very clear about what you're signing. This document gives you significant financial protection. The monthly allowance, the trust fund, ownership of any assets you acquire during the marriage. Grant Hale has essentially built in every safeguard I would have demanded on your behalf, but it also binds you to a performance that could have serious legal consequences if it fails." "What kind of consequences?" "If the court determines the marriage is fraudulent, both of you could face charges. Marriage fraud carries penalties including fines and potential jail time. Now, realistically, that's unlikely unless someone can prove deliberate deception with malicious intent. But the risk exists." Ava's stomach tightened. "He didn't mention that." "He probably assumed you understood." Patricia leaned back in her chair. "Miss Monroe, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Are you being coerced into this? Is there any threat, explicit or implicit, forcing your hand?" "My father's debts are already paid," Ava said. "Grant made that clear. I could walk away right now." "Then why haven't you?" The question hung in the air between them. Why hadn't she? Ava could have said no last night, could have torn up the contract and gone back to her regular life. Except her regular life meant living under her parents' roof, following their rules, becoming whoever they needed her to be to restore the family reputation. "Because I want out," Ava admitted quietly, "of my parents' house, their expectations, their version of who I should be. This arrangement gives me that. It gives me freedom, even if it comes with conditions." Patricia studied her for a long moment. "Then my advice is this. If you sign, commit fully. Don't half-ass the performance, don't let your guard down with the wrong people, and don't underestimate how much work it takes to build a believable life with someone. You'll need to know his coffee order, his morning routine, the way he takes his whiskey. You'll need to look at him the way wives look at husbands they actually chose. Can you do that?" "I don't know," Ava said honestly, "but I think I can learn." "Good answer." Patricia pulled out a pen, made a final notation. "I have one suggested amendment. The contract says the marriage lasts 2 years or until the custody situation resolves. I want to add a clause that allows you to terminate early if Grant violates the terms, specifically the separate bedrooms and no expectation of intimacy provisions. You should have an exit if he crosses those boundaries." "He didn't seem like—" "I don't care what he seemed like," Patricia interrupted. "You're 20 years old entering a contract with a 42-year-old man who has significantly more power and resources than you. You need protections. Let me add this clause." Ava nodded, grateful. "Okay, yes, thank you." Patricia spent the next 20 minutes drafting the amendment in precise legal language. Then she called Grant's lawyer, a man named David something, and negotiated the addition with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Ava listened to half the conversation, impressed despite herself. When Patricia hung up, she looked satisfied. "Done. They've agreed to the amendment. I'll have the revised contract sent over within the hour, and then it's your decision." "That's it?" "That's it." Patricia handed her a business card. "My number. If anything goes wrong during this arrangement, anything at all, you call me immediately. I don't care if it's 3 in the morning. Understand?" Ava took the card, added it to the collection she was apparently building. "I understand. One more thing." Patricia's expression softened slightly. I know this looks like you're selling yourself. I know how it feels. But if you go into this with your eyes open, if you use these 2 years to build the life you actually want, then maybe it's not selling. Maybe it's investing. Investing in what? In yourself. In your future. In the person you're going to become once you're out from under your family's thumb. Patricia stood, extending her hand. Good luck, Miss Monroe. I think you're braver than you realize. Ava shook her hand, left the office, and stood on the snowy sidewalk trying to decide if she felt brave or just cornered. Her phone buzzed. Her mother. How did it go with the lawyer? Ava typed back, fine, contract is fair. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, does that mean you'll sign? Ava didn't answer. Instead, she pulled up Grant's number and called before she could overthink it. He answered on the second ring. Ava, how was the meeting? Informative, she said. Your lawyer agreed to an amendment. I'll have an exit clause if you violate the separate bedrooms provision. A pause. That's fair. I should have included it myself. Why didn't you? Honestly, it didn't occur to me. I wasn't thinking about... He stopped, exhaled. I'm not interested in that aspect of marriage, Ava. This is about Mia, about custody, nothing else. Your lawyer added the clause anyway, Ava said, so I guess we're both protected. Good. He sounded relieved. Does this mean you've decided? Had she? Ava looked around at Silver Ridge's downtown, the boutiques she couldn't afford, the restaurants her parents pretended they could still frequent, the whole beautiful facade of a life that was slipping away. I want to see your house first, she said, where I'd be living, and I want to talk to Mia again, without the performance. I need to know what I'm actually signing up for. Of course. When? Now, Ava said impulsively. If you're available. Another pause, longer this time. I'm available. I'll text you the address. 20 minutes later, Ava was driving her aging Honda up a winding mountain road, following GPS directions to a place she'd never been. The snow was heavier here, the houses farther apart, the air sharper and cleaner than in town. Grant's address led to a gated driveway, but the gate was open and she pulled through into a circular drive in front of a house that made her breath catch. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't even particularly large, but it was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with showing off. Timber and stone and huge windows that looked out over a valley of snow-covered pines. Smoke curled from a chimney, warm light glowed from inside. It looked like a home. Grant opened the front door before she'd even turned off the engine. He wore jeans and a flannel shirt, and somehow looked more at ease here than he had in her father's study. You found it okay? He asked as she climbed out. Your directions were good. Ava looked up at the house. This is not what I expected. What did you expect? Something colder, more, corporate. He smiled slightly. My late wife designed it. She said if we were going to live in the mountains, we should actually live in them, not just look at them through glass. There was grief in his voice, but also warmth. He'd loved her, Ava realized. Actually loved her. This wasn't a man who took marriage lightly, even a fake one. Come inside, Grant said. Fair warning, it's chaos right now. Mia's in the middle of a baking experiment. He wasn't kidding. The house smelled like burned sugar and vanilla, and Ava could hear a child's voice from somewhere inside reciting what sounded like recipe instructions. The entry opened into a great room with vaulted ceilings and that stunning window view. But what struck Ava wasn't the architecture, it was the life everywhere. Boots lined up by the door, not perfectly but close enough. A backpack spilling homework onto a bench. Framed drawings clearly made by a child's hand hung at Mia's eye level, not hidden away. A wood stove burning low, radiating heat. This wasn't a showplace. This was where people actually lived. Mia, Grant called. Ava's here. Scrambling footsteps, and then Mia appeared from what must be the kitchen, wearing an apron covered in flour and what looked like chocolate. Her glasses were slightly crooked. Hi, she said, suddenly shy. We're making cookies. They're not very good. They're fine, Grant said patiently. They're just a little crispy. They're burned, Mia corrected. But Dad says we learn more from mistakes, so actually they're educational. Ava couldn't help but smile. What kind of cookies? Chocolate chip. Except I forgot the butter was supposed to be soft, so I melted it, and now they're... She gestured vaguely. Flat. Flat cookies still taste good, Ava said. Can I see? Mia's face brightened, and she grabbed Ava's hand with zero hesitation, tugging her toward the kitchen. Grant followed, looking amused. The kitchen was a disaster. Flour everywhere, chocolate chips scattered across the counter, mixing bowls in the sink. But it was also charming, with its butcher block island and copper pots hanging from a rack, and a massive refrigerator covered in Mia's artwork and school papers. On a cooling rack sat the saddest-looking cookies Ava had ever seen. Thin, dark around the edges, spread out like they'd tried to escape the baking sheet. See? Mia said. Terrible. Ava picked one up, took a bite. It was crispy and too sweet, and somehow also perfect. Educational, she agreed, but still delicious. Mia grinned, gap-toothed and genuine, and something in Ava's chest unexpectedly warmed. Grant leaned against the counter, watching them. Mia, why don't you show Ava around while I clean up this disaster? You made half the disaster, Mia pointed out. Fair, but I'm still cleaning it. Mia took Ava's hand again. Apparently they were hand-holding friends now, and led her on a tour. The house was larger than it looked from outside, with a layout that flowed naturally. Downstairs, the great room, kitchen, Grant's office, and a cozy library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Upstairs, 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Mia showed her everything with the unfiltered honesty of an 8-year-old. That's Dad's room. It's boring, just books and boring stuff. That's the guest room where Grandma stays sometimes. And this is my room. Mia's bedroom was painted purple with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Science posters covered one wall. Planets, the water cycle, photosynthesis. Her bed was unmade, stuffed animals piled haphazardly on top. I like space stuff, Mia explained unnecessarily. And dinosaurs, and chemistry, but Dad says I can't have real chemicals until I'm older. That's probably wise, Ava said, looking around. There were photographs on the dresser. Mia as a baby, Mia with Grant, Mia with a woman who must have been her mother. The resemblance was striking. Mia had her mother's smile and her father's eyes. Mia saw her looking. That's my mom, she said matter-of-factly. She died last year. Cancer. I'm sorry, Ava said, because what else was there to say? It's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but... Mia shrugged. I'm used to it now, mostly. Mostly is honest. Dad says honesty is important. Mia sat on her bed, swinging her legs. Are you really going to marry him? There was that directness again. Ava sat beside her, choosing her words carefully. We're talking about it. It's complicated. Because of the custody thing, Mia said. I know about that. My grandparents, my mom's parents, they think Dad can't take care of me by himself. They want me to live with them. How do you feel about that? Mia's expression shuddered. I don't want to leave. This is my house, my school, my friends, and Dad. Her voice went small. He's all I have left. Ava felt that familiar twist in her chest. What about your dad's mom? Your grandmother? Grandma Hale is great, but she lives in Seattle. I'd only see her sometimes. Mia looked up at Ava, and her eyes were too old for her face. The lawyer said Dad needs to show he can give me a stable home. That's what you'd be, right? The stable part? I guess so, Ava said, if I agreed. You should agree, Mia said with certainty. You're nicer than I thought you'd be, and you like science. That's important. Why is that important? Because you have to be interested in real things, not just... She waved her hand dismissively. Shopping and makeup and stuff. I need someone who won't treat me like I'm stupid. You're not stupid, Ava said firmly. You're clearly very smart. I know, Mia said without arrogance, just fact. But some people don't like that. They want girls to be quiet and pretty and not ask questions. Those people are wrong. I know that too. Mia studied her. Would you live here? In this house? If I married your dad, yes. Where would you sleep? Ava hesitated. In the guest room, probably. Your dad and I, it wouldn't be that kind of marriage. What kind would it be? How did you explain a contract marriage to an 8-year-old? More like roommates who are really good friends, partners. Mia considered this. That's weird. Very weird, Ava agreed. But okay, weird or bad weird? I don't know yet. What do you think? Mia was quiet for a long moment, swinging her legs and thinking. Finally, she said, I think if you're going to live here, you should know that I have nightmares sometimes. And I don't like loud noises, and I need the bathroom light on at night, and sometimes I check the doors a lot to make sure they're locked. Okay, Ava said gently. Thank you for telling me. And I'm not looking for a new mom, Mia added firmly. I have a mom. She's just dead. I understand. But I wouldn't mind having someone else around. Someone who's not dad, but also not a stranger. Mia looked at her directly. Could you be that? Ava felt the weight of the question. This child wasn't asking for a mother or even a friend. She was asking for consistency, for someone solid in a world that had already proven itself unstable. I could try, Ava said. I can't promise I'd be perfect at it. I've never lived with a kid before. But I could try to be someone stable, someone you could count on. Mia nodded slowly. That's all Dad's asking too, just trying. They sat in silence for a moment, and Ava realized she'd already made her decision. Somewhere between the burned cookies and the purple bedroom and this too serious 8-year-old asking for something as simple as reliability, she'd decided. Mia! Grant's voice from downstairs. Can you come help me with something? Mia hopped off the bed. That means he wants to talk to you alone, she said with the wisdom of a child who'd learned to read adult codes. He does that when things are important. She left, and Ava heard her thundering down the stairs. A moment later, Grant appeared in the doorway. Sorry, he said. She can be intense. She's wonderful, Ava said honestly, and terrifying. Both accurate. He leaned against the doorframe. What did you think of the house? Ava stood, looked around one more time. It's not what I expected. I thought it would be, I don't know, colder. More like a museum, but it's warm, lived in. That was important to Sarah, my wife. She said a house should show the evidence of the people who live there. He smiled slightly. Hence the fingerprints on the windows and the scuff marks on the floors. I like it, Ava said. And she did. She could imagine living here in this warm chaos, in a way she'd never been able to imagine living in her parents' pristine estate. The guest room would be yours, Grant said, gesturing down the hall. It has its own bathroom. You could decorate however you want, bring whatever you need. I want you to feel like it's actually your space, not just somewhere you're staying temporarily. Even though I am staying temporarily. Even though, he held her gaze. I meant what I said about this being your choice, Ava. If you're having doubts, I'm not, she interrupted. I mean, I am, but not about whether to do this. More about whether I can actually pull it off. Pull what off? Convincing people we're married for real. Convincing the court. Being what Mia needs. She shook her head. I'm 20 years old, Grant. I've never lived away from my parents. I don't know the first thing about being a wife or a stepmother or any of this. Neither do I, Grant said. I don't know how to have a marriage that isn't real. I don't know how to ask someone to upend their entire life for my benefit. We're both figuring this out. That's not reassuring. No, he agreed, but it's honest. Ava walked to the window, looked out at the snow-covered valley. Mia asked if I could be someone stable, someone she could count on. What did you say? That I'd try. She turned back to face him. So here's my question. Can you count on me? Really? Because if we're going to do this, if we're going to convince a judge and Mia's grandparents and everyone else that this is legitimate, then we have to trust each other. And I'm not sure how to build that kind of trust with someone I barely know. Grant was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he said, My late wife and I dated for 6 months before we got engaged. People thought we were rushing it, that we barely knew each other. But Sarah used to say that trust isn't about time. It's about consistency. You build it by showing up, day after day, and doing what you said you'd do. So maybe we start there. Showing up, Ava repeated, and doing what we promised. I promised to pay your family's debts. Done. To give you financial independence? It's in the contract. To respect your boundaries. I will. Now you promise me what you're willing to promise, and we both follow through. That's how we build trust. It was logical, pragmatic, and somehow also reassuring. Okay, Ava said. I promise to live here to present a believable marriage, to be consistent and kind with Mia. I promised to stay for 2 years or until the custody situation resolves. And I promised to tell you if I can't do this anymore, rather than just disappearing. That last one's important, Grant said quietly. Mia's already lost her mother. If you're going to be part of her life, you can't just vanish. I won't, Ava said, and she meant it. They stood looking at each other across the purple bedroom with its glow-in-the-dark stars, and Ava felt the future clicking into place with an almost audible snap. So we're doing this, Grant said. Not a question. We're doing this, Ava confirmed. When? The contract says next week. Is that still necessary? The hearing's in 6 weeks. We need time for you to move in, for Mia to adjust, for us to establish a routine that looks genuine. Son, he ran a hand through his hair. I know it's fast. Everything about this is fast, Ava said. Might as well commit to it. They went downstairs together, found Mia in the kitchen eating burned cookies and drinking milk. She looked up as they entered, her expression carefully neutral. Well? She asked. Grant looked at Ava. Ava looked at Mia, and then she said the words that would change everything. I'm going to marry your dad. Mia's face split into a grin. Really? Really? When? Next week, apparently. Mia's eyes went wide. That's so soon. We have to plan everything. Do you have a dress? Are we having a party? Can I help? Grant laughed, and it was the first time Ava had heard him sound genuinely relaxed. Slow down. It's going to be a very small ceremony. Just family. Nothing fancy. But still a wedding, Mia insisted. Weddings are important. They are, Ava agreed, though privately she thought this particular wedding would be more performance art than sacred ceremony. Mia bounced in her seat. This is good. This is really good. The lawyer people can't say Dad's alone now because you'll be here. And you can come to my science fair next month. And you can help me with my volcano project because Dad's terrible at art. I'm not terrible, Grant protested. You are, Mia said cheerfully. Remember when you tried to help me draw the solar system and made Jupiter look like a blob? Jupiter is essentially a blob, not a purple blob. They bickered comfortably, and Ava watched them with a strange feeling in her chest. This was what she was signing up for, not romance or passion, but this. Burned cookies and science projects and easy teasing between a father and daughter who'd survived loss together. She could do this. She would do this. Her phone buzzed. Her mother again. Ava, please call me. Your father and I need to know what you've decided. Ava excused herself, stepped onto the deck that wrapped around the back of the house. The cold air bit at her skin, but it felt clarifying. She called her mother. Ava, thank goodness. We've been so worried. I'm signing the contract, Ava said. I'm marrying Grant Hale. The wedding's next week. Silence on the other end. Then, oh, darling, oh, thank you. Your father will be so relieved. I'm not doing this for Dad, Ava interrupted. I'm doing it for me, for my own reasons. And after the wedding, I'll be living here, not at the estate. I'll visit, but this will be my home. Of course, of course. Whatever you need. Her mother sounded like she was crying. I know this isn't what you wanted, Ava. I know we've asked too much, but I promise, everything will work out. Mom. Ava cut her off gently. It's done. The decision's made. Now we just move forward. Yes. Forward. Margaret composed herself. Should we plan anything, the ceremony, or... Grant's handling it. Small ceremony. Family only. I'll let you know the details. They talked for a few more minutes, her mother alternating between relief and guilt, before Ava finally ended the call. She stood on the deck, looking out at the darkening valley, and let herself feel the weight of what she'd just committed to. 2 years. One grieving child. A marriage that wasn't real but had to look real enough to fool everyone who mattered. The door opened behind her. Grant stepped out, handed her a mug of hot chocolate without a word. They stood side by side, drinking in silence. Your mother okay? He asked finally. Relieved. Guilty. The usual. Ava took another sip. Yours? Worried. Supportive. Also the usual. He smiled slightly. She wants to meet you properly before the wedding, and she has opinions about rushing into things. Even though you explained the situation? Especially because I explained the situation. She thinks I'm being reckless. He paused. She might be right. We're both being reckless, Ava said, but we're doing it with contracts and lawyers, so it's sophisticated recklessness. Grant laughed, and Ava realized she liked the sound of it. Fair enough. Listen, about the wedding, I meant it when I said small. I was thinking just immediate family, a judge, maybe my lawyer present. Nothing elaborate. That's fine with me. And after, we'll need to... He hesitated. We'll need to live together convincingly. That means learning each other's routines, being comfortable in the same space, looking like a couple who chose this. I know that's asking a lot. We have a week, Ava said, and then the rest of our lives to fake it till we make it. Or until the custody hearing. Right, that. They fell quiet again. Inside, Ava could see Mia through the window, coloring at the kitchen table. The scene was so domestic, so normal, that it almost hurt. Can I ask you something? Ava said. Anything. What happens if this doesn't work? If the judge sees through it, or Mia's grandparents find proof it's fake, or we just can't pull it off? Grant's expression hardened. Then I lose custody, and Mia goes to live with the Rowans in Connecticut. She'd see me on weekends, maybe holidays. She'd grow up in a house that isn't hers, with people who mean well but don't understand her. And she'd spend the rest of her childhood grieving not just her mother, but the life she lost when I failed her. His voice was raw, and Ava understood with sudden clarity that this wasn't just about winning a legal battle. This was about a father fighting for his daughter's right to stay home. Then we won't let that happen, she said. Grant looked at her, surprise flickering across his features. Just like that? Just like that. Ava finished her hot chocolate. You're right about trust being consistency. So here's me being consistent. I said, I'd do this, and I will. Whatever it takes. Something shifted in Grant's expression. Gratitude, maybe, or respect. Thank you, he said quietly. I know I keep saying that, but... Then stop saying it, Ava interrupted. We're partners now. Partners don't thank each other for showing up. They just show up. He smiled, and it reached his eyes this time. Deal. They went back inside, where Mia had abandoned coloring in favor of building something with Legos. She looked up as they entered. Are you staying for dinner? She asked Ava hopefully. Ava glanced at Grant, who nodded. If you want to, he said. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti. I can help cook, Ava offered. You don't have to. I want to. And she did. She wanted to be part of this, even for just one evening. Wanted to see what her future would actually look like. So she stayed. She chopped vegetables while Grant boiled pasta and Mia set the table with the chaotic precision of a child who was trying very hard to be helpful. They ate together at the worn wooden table, and Mia told them about her science fair project in exhaustive detail, and Grant teased her about her dramatic presentation style, and Ava just listened, absorbing the rhythm of their household. This is what she was buying with 2 years of her life. This warmth, this ease, this feeling of belonging somewhere other than her parents' perfectly maintained estate. After dinner, Mia insisted on showing Ava her volcano project, which was currently half built in the garage. It was ambitious and messy, and probably not structurally sound, but Mia explained every detail with such passion that Ava couldn't help but be charmed. Science fair's in 3 weeks, Mia said. Will you come? I'll be married to your dad by then, Ava said. So, yes, I'll come. Mia beamed. Good. You can stand with the other parents. The other parents? Ava hadn't thought about that part. The school events, the parent-teacher conferences, all the small performances that would sell the legitimacy of their marriage. Later, as Ava was getting ready to leave, Grant walked her to her car. You were good with her tonight, he said. Natural. I wasn't trying to be anything, Ava admitted. She's easy to talk to when she's not asking impossible questions. She liked you, Grant said. Really liked you. That's not common. Mia's been wary of new people since Sarah died. Maybe I'm not that new anymore. Ava unlocked her car. Listen, about moving in, when do you want me to do that? After the wedding makes the most sense. But if you want to bring some things over before, start settling in. No, Ava said quickly. After. It should be... She searched for the word. Official. Grant nodded. Okay. I'll send you the final contract tomorrow. Once you sign and return it, we're committed. No backing out. Not without consequences. They looked at each other across the hood of her Honda, and Ava felt the weight of what they were about to do settle over them both. "I'll see you at the wedding," she said. "See you at the wedding," Grant echoed. Ava drove home through the dark, winding mountain roads, her headlights cutting through falling snow. The house disappeared behind her, but she could still feel its warmth, could still hear Mia's laughter and Grant's quiet voice. She'd made her choice. Now she just had to live with it. When she got back to the estate, her parents were waiting. They hugged her, thanked her, told her how proud they were, and how everything would work out. Her father actually cried, which was horrifying and humanizing in equal measure. Ava let them have their relief. Let them believe she was doing this for the family, for them. It was easier than explaining the truth, that she was doing it for herself, for the chance to become someone other than Richard and Margaret Monroe's perfectly controlled daughter. That night, lying in her childhood bedroom for what would be one of the last times, Ava pulled out the contract and read it through one final time. Marriage, cohabitation, performance, trust fund. 2 years. At the bottom, a blank space for her signature. She signed it without ceremony, without drama. Just her name in black ink, binding her to a future she couldn't quite imagine but had already chosen. The next morning, she scanned the signed pages and emailed them to Grant's lawyer. Then she started packing. The wedding happened on a Wednesday morning in a judge's chambers that smelled faintly of pine and old paper. Ava wore a simple cream dress she'd bought the day before, and Grant wore a dark suit that looked like he'd pulled it from the back of his closet. Mia stood between them in a purple velvet dress, clutching a small bouquet of white roses like her life depended on it. The whole ceremony lasted 12 minutes. Judge Patricia Morrison, no relation to Patricia Chen, though Ava momentarily wondered if there was some kind of Patricia conspiracy, read through the legal requirements with the brisk efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Grant's mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Ava's parents stood stiffly near the back, her father looking relieved, and her mother looking like she was trying very hard not to cry. "Do you, Grant Michael Hale, take Ava Catherine Monroe to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Grant's voice was steady. "I do." "And do you, Ava Catherine Monroe, take Grant Michael Hale to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Ava looked at Grant's face, serious, tired, grateful, and felt the surreality of the moment crash over her. 20 years old and marrying a stranger in a judge's office while his daughter watched with those two knowing eyes. "I do," she said, and meant it in the only way she could. She would do this. She would make it work. Judge Morrison smiled. "Then, by the power vested in me by the state, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss if you'd like." There was an awkward pause. They hadn't discussed this part. Grant looked at Ava with a question in his eyes, and she gave a tiny nod because people were watching and it had to look real. He leaned in and kissed her cheek, quick and chaste, and Ava felt Mia's hand slip into hers. "Okay," Mia whispered. "Now you're official." Official. Ava was officially Mrs. Grant Hale. The name felt like someone else's coat, borrowed and ill-fitting. There was no reception, no cake, no dancing, just handshakes and brief hugs, and Grant's mother pulling Ava aside to whisper, "Take care of them, please. They've been through so much." "I will," Ava promised, though she wasn't sure how to take care of people she barely knew. Her own mother hugged her tightly and said, "Call me if you need anything, anything at all." What Ava needed was a time machine and better life choices, but she just nodded and said she would. And then suddenly they were in Grant's SUV, all three of them now, a family on paper, driving up the mountain road toward the house that was supposed to become her home. "That was weird," Mia announced from the back seat. "Very weird," Ava agreed. "But good weird," Mia added quickly. "Right?" Grant glanced at Ava, and she saw the question there. Was it good weird? Had they just made a terrible mistake? "Good weird," Ava confirmed, and Mia relaxed visibly. The house looked different when they arrived. Ava's Honda was already there, parked beside Grant's truck, and seeing both vehicles together made everything feel more permanent. This wasn't a visit anymore. This was her life now. Inside, someone had left a small arrangement of flowers on the kitchen counter with a card that read, "Congratulations, love Diane and Tom." Ava had no idea who Diane and Tom were. "Neighbors," Grant explained, seeing her confusion. "They're Enthusiastic. They're nosy, Mia corrected, but nice nosy. Grant started to respond, then just shook his head. I'm going to change. Mia, can you show Ava where we put her boxes? You brought my things? Ava asked, surprised. You said after the wedding, Grant said. Your father dropped them off this morning. Everything should be in the guest room. He disappeared upstairs and Mia grabbed Ava's hand again. Come on! We organized everything. Well, Dad organized. I supervised. The guest room had been transformed. Ava's boxes were stacked neatly along one wall, but the room itself had been prepared with fresh sheets, new towels, and a small vase of lavender on the nightstand. The closet was empty and waiting, and someone had cleared space in the dresser. Dad wanted you to have room for all your stuff, Mia said. He said you should feel like you actually live here, not like you're visiting. Ava felt an unexpected tightness in her throat. It was thoughtful in a way she hadn't anticipated. Thank you. You can decorate however you want. Dad said so, even if you want to paint the walls or whatever. Mia bounced on her heels. Want help unpacking? They spent the next hour going through boxes together. Mia was fascinated by everything. Ava's books, her laptop, her collection of rocks from various hiking trips. She asked 1,000 questions about each item, and Ava found herself telling stories she hadn't thought about in years. You actually climbed that mountain? Mia asked, holding a piece of granite from Ava's failed attempt at scaling a 14er when she was 17. Halfway up, Ava admitted. Then I got altitude sickness and had to turn back. Did you throw up? Extensively. Mia giggled, and the sound was so genuine that Ava smiled despite herself. Grant appeared in the doorway, now in jeans and a Henley. How's it going? Ava threw up on a mountain, Mia announced gleefully. I've thrown up on several mountains, Grant said. It's a rite of passage. Really? Mia looked delighted. You never told me that. Because you didn't need ideas. He looked at Ava. I was thinking we should have a proper dinner tonight. Not fancy, just us. First meal as a family. Family. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. That sounds good, Ava said carefully. Can we make pizza? Mia asked. Homemade pizza? We can make whatever you want, Grant said. It's a special day. So they made pizza, or attempted to. The dough was store-bought and the toppings were haphazard, and Mia put so much cheese on hers that it threatened to slide off entirely. But they worked together in the kitchen, passing ingredients and arguing about whether pineapple belonged on pizza, and it felt almost normal. Almost. Ava kept catching herself watching them. The easy way Grant anticipated what Mia needed, how Mia unconsciously mirrored her father's gestures, the entire language they'd built together that Ava was now supposed to learn and integrate into. You're quiet, Grant observed as they waited for the pizza to bake. Just thinking. About? How strange this is. Being married to someone whose coffee order I don't know. Black, Grant said. 2 sugars in the morning, none after lunch. You? Latte with oat milk, sometimes vanilla if I'm feeling fancy. See? Now we know each other better. He smiled slightly. We'll figure out the rest. The rest turned out to be harder than Ava expected. That first week living in Grant's house felt like wearing someone else's skin. She'd wake up in the unfamiliar bedroom, disoriented until she remembered where she was and why. She'd go downstairs to find Grant already up, making breakfast with practiced efficiency, and have to navigate the small intimacies of sharing a kitchen with strangers. Coffee's ready, he'd say, and she'd thank him, and they'd stand on opposite sides of the counter like awkward roommates. Mia helped. She treated Ava's presence as completely normal, demanding help with homework and opinions on her outfits and company during her elaborate after-school snacks. It was exhausting and grounding in equal measure. Does this shirt match these pants? Mia would ask, and Ava would have to actually think about it, would have to care about the answer because Mia was waiting with that serious expression. The colors are good, but maybe try the green shirt instead? Okay. And Mia would race off to change, trusting Ava's judgment implicitly. The routines built themselves slowly. Grant woke first, always, made coffee, and packed Mia's lunch. Ava would come down 20 minutes later, and they'd established a system where he handled breakfast while she got Mia's backpack organized. Then Grant would drive Mia to school. That was non-negotiable, their time together. And Ava would have the house to herself until mid-morning. She'd enrolled in online classes to finish her degree, and the quiet hours were productive. But they also gave her too much time to think about the strange situation she'd walked into. About the photos of Grant's late wife still displayed throughout the house. About the custody hearing looming in 5 weeks. About whether she was actually helping or just playing dress-up in someone else's life. Grant worked from home most days, designing something technical that Ava didn't fully understand. He'd disappear into his office after dropping Mia off, and she'd hear the occasional phone call through the walls, his voice low and professional. They were polite to each other, careful, like diplomats navigating a treaty neither completely trusted. It was Mia who forced them together. "We should build something," she announced one Saturday morning. "All 3 of us. A project." "What kind of project?" Grant asked warily. "I don't know. Something outside." Mia pressed her face against the window where new snow had fallen overnight. "Something with snow!" Which is how Ava found herself in the backyard, freezing despite her layers, helping construct what Mia called a snow habitat for birds. "It has to be architectural," Mia insisted, "not just a lump." "All snow sculptures are basically lumps," Grant pointed out. "Not if you have vision, Dad." They worked for 2 hours, their breath fogging in the cold air, building walls and structures that didn't quite match Mia's ambitious mental image, but were charming in their wonkiness. Ava discovered that Grant was surprisingly perfectionist about the engineering aspects, while Mia cared more about decoration. "It needs windows," Mia demanded. "Birds don't need windows," Grant said. "But it looks better with windows." Ava found herself mediating, suggesting compromises that satisfied them both. And somewhere in the negotiations over window placement and roof angles, something shifted. They started working together instead of separately, started anticipating each other's movements, started laughing at their collective incompetence at snow architecture. When they finally stepped back to admire their creation, a lopsided structure that was part igloo, part abstract art, Mia clapped her mittened hands together. "It's perfect," she declared. "It's a disaster," Grant said, but he was smiling. "It's perfectly disastrous," Ava agreed. Mia looked between them, something calculating in her expression. Then she said, very casually, "You guys are getting better at this." "At snow sculptures?" Ava asked. "At being married." The words landed like a stone in still water. Grant and Ava exchanged glances, and Ava saw her own uncertainty reflected in his eyes. "We're trying," Grant said carefully. "I know," Mia said. "I can tell." She paused, then added with devastating directness, "Do you guys even like each other? Or is this just for the court thing?" Ava felt her stomach drop. They'd been so careful around Mia, so conscious of maintaining the performance, but apparently not careful enough. Grant crouched down to Mia's level, snow dusting his knees. "Hey, where's this coming from?" "I'm not stupid, Dad. I know this is about the custody thing with Grandma and Grandpa Rowan." Mia's voice was matter-of-fact, but her hands were clenched tight. "I know you married Ava so the judge would think we're a normal family." "Mia, it's okay," Mia interrupted. "I get it. I'm glad you did it. But I need to know if you actually like her or if you're just pretending. Because if you're just pretending, then when the court stuff is over, she's going to leave. Right?" The question hung in the frozen air between them. Ava felt her heart hammering against her ribs. This was the moment. They could lie, maintain the performance, tell Mia everything was perfect and permanent. Or they could tell the truth. Grant looked at Ava, a silent question. She gave a small nod. "Come inside," Grant said to Mia. "Let's talk about this properly." They settled in the living room, hot chocolate in hands, the fire crackling in the wood stove. Mia sat between them on the couch, waiting with that patient seriousness that was so much older than 8. "You're right," Grant said finally. "Ava and I got married partly because of the custody situation. I needed to show the court that I could provide a stable, 2-parent household. That's the truth." Mia nodded slowly. "And after the court decides?" "The arrangement is for 2 years," Grant said. "After that, Ava and I will figure out what comes next." "So she is leaving," Mia said flatly. "Not necessarily," Ava heard herself say. Both of them turned to look at her, and she felt the weight of their attention. "Mia, your dad and I got married for practical reasons. That's true. But that doesn't mean it's not real or that I'm going to disappear. It means we're building something different than most marriages. We're partners who are figuring out how to be a family together. But do you like him? Mia persisted. Did she? Ava looked at Grant, this man she'd known for 2 weeks, married for one. He was kind and careful and clearly devoted to his daughter. He was also a stranger she was legally bound to. I respect your dad, Ava said carefully. I think he's a good person who's doing everything he can for you. And I like being here. I like our Saturday morning pancakes and helping with your homework and building ridiculous snow sculptures. Those things are real, even if the marriage started as an arrangement. But you're not in love, Mia said. No, Ava admitted. We're not in love, but we care about each other, and we're both committed to making this work. That has to count for something. Mia was quiet for a long time, processing. Then she said, My mom and dad were in love. I remember. They were, Grant said softly. Very much. And you still miss her? Every day. Me too. Mia's voice went small. I don't want to forget her. You won't, Grant said firmly. I won't let that happen. And Ava's not trying to replace your mom. Right, Ava? Never, Ava said. Your mom was your mom. I'm just someone else. Someone who wants to be here for you in a different way. Mia turned that over, her forehead creased in thought. Finally, she said, Okay, but I have conditions. Conditions? Grant sounded amused despite the heaviness of the conversation. Yes. If Ava's going to live here and be part of this family, then we all have to be honest with each other. No lying about important stuff. And if things change, if someone wants to leave, or if you guys decide you can't stand each other, you have to tell me. You can't just let me believe everything's fine and then have it all fall apart. Her voice cracked slightly. I can't do that again. Ava understood then what Mia was really asking for. Her mother's death had been inevitable, but still shocking, still a betrayal of the natural order. Mia needed to know that this time she wouldn't be blindsided. I promise, Ava said. Complete honesty. If anything changes, you'll be the first to know. Dad? I promise too, Grant said. No surprises. We're a team, all three of us. Mia seemed to accept this. She took a long sip of her hot chocolate, then said, Can we still call this a family, even if it's weird? Absolutely, Grant said. Families come in all shapes. Ours just happens to be family-shaped. That doesn't make sense, Dad. Very little about this makes sense, kiddo, but we're doing it anyway. Mia smiled slightly, and Ava felt something loosen in her chest. They'd survived the first real test. They'd told the truth, or close enough to it, and Mia hadn't run screaming. The conversation shifted then to easier topics. Mia's upcoming science fair, a movie she wanted to watch, whether they should get a dog. The tension dissolved, replaced by the comfortable rhythm they'd been building over the past week. That night, after Mia was asleep, Ava and Grant sat in the living room with glasses of wine neither of them was really drinking. That was intense, Grant said finally. She's too smart for her own good. She gets that from her mother. He stared into the fire. Sarah was like that, always seeing through to the truth of things. Mia's the same way. It must be hard, Ava said quietly, seeing her everywhere in Mia. It is, but it's also a gift. He looked at Ava. Thank you for being honest with her. You could have lied, made it easier. Easier now, harder later. She deserved the truth. They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling and the snow falling outside the windows. Then Grant said, The custody hearing is in 4 weeks. The Rowan's lawyer is going to dig into everything. Our marriage, our living situation, Mia's adjustment. We need to be prepared. How do we prepare for someone trying to prove our marriage is fake when it actually is fake? By making it as real as possible, Grant said. Not romantic love. Mia's right that we're not there and probably won't be. But partnership, trust, a functioning household. Those things are real, and they're what the court actually cares about. So we just keep doing what we're doing? And maybe step it up a bit. Joint bank account, shared calendar, more visible couple activities. The Rowans will be looking for evidence that we're living separate lives under the same roof. We need to prove otherwise. Joint bank account. Ava felt a flicker of anxiety. You'd still have your own accounts, Grant said quickly. But having one together makes it look more legitimate. We'd use it for household expenses, family activities. I'll fund it. You don't need to contribute. That seems like I'm paying you to be my wife? Grant's smile was wry. Because I am. That's the arrangement. But the court doesn't need to know that part. It was mercenary and practical, and somehow also the most honest conversation Ava had had in months. Okay, she said, joint account. What else? They spent the next hour strategizing like generals preparing for battle. Date nights that neighbors would see. School events where they'd present as a unified couple. Photos together for social media. Every detail calculated to paint the picture of a legitimate marriage. This feels manipulative, Ava said at one point. It is manipulative, Grant agreed. But so is the Rowans' lawsuit. They're arguing I can't provide stability when Mia is thriving here. They're using the court system to take my daughter because they can't accept that their daughter is gone, and I'm what's left. So yes, we're manipulating the narrative, but we're doing it to protect a child who's already lost enough. When he put it that way, Ava found it easier to justify. This wasn't about deceiving everyone. It was about protecting Mia from being uprooted unnecessarily. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Mornings were routine: breakfast, school drop-off, work, and classes. Afternoons were family time, homework help, dinner prep, the comfortable chaos of a household with a child. Evenings were carefully orchestrated. Dinner together at the table, board games or movies, visible domesticity for anyone who might be watching. They started going to Mia's soccer games together, sitting in the bleachers with other parents who assumed they were just another married couple. They went to parent-teacher conferences as a team, discussing Mia's excellent grades and occasional defiance with her teacher. They grocery shopped together, bickering over whether to buy name brand or generic. And Ava realized one day that she knew exactly how Grant organized the pantry and which coffee mugs were his favorites. Small intimacies, building without either of them quite noticing. But there were still boundaries, still careful distance maintained in the spaces that mattered. Grant never entered Ava's room without knocking. Ava never asked about the photographs of Sarah or the wedding ring Grant still wore on a chain around his neck. They were partners, housemates, co-parents to a child neither had expected. They were not in love. 3 weeks into the marriage, Ava's mother invited them to dinner at the estate. It was awkward and stilted, with Richard making too many jokes and Margaret fussing over details. But at one point, watching Grant help Mia cut her steak while making her laugh about something, Margaret leaned close to Ava and whispered, "You made the right choice." Had she? Ava still wasn't sure, but she was here now, committed to seeing it through. The science fair arrived on a Thursday evening. The school gymnasium was packed with projects ranging from baking soda volcanoes to elaborate robotics experiments. Mia's volcano was somewhere in the middle, ambitious in design, shaky in execution, but delivered with such passionate conviction that 3 different judges stopped to ask questions. Ava and Grant stood together, watching Mia explain the geothermal processes behind volcanic eruptions with the confidence of someone who'd spent weeks researching. "She's incredible," Ava murmured. "She is," Grant agreed. "Sarah would be so proud." It was the first time he'd mentioned his late wife naturally, without pain or careful distance. Ava glanced at him and saw his eyes were bright. "I'm sure she would be," Ava said softly. "I'm glad you're here," Grant said suddenly. "I know we don't really talk about this, but I want you to know. Having you here, being part of this, it matters. To both of us." Before Ava could respond, Mia spotted them and waved frantically. They waved back and Mia's face split into a grin. "She's happy," Ava said. "She is," Grant agreed. "First time in a long time." The evening ended with Mia winning an honorable mention, which she accepted with grave seriousness. On the drive home, she chattered about which judge asked the best questions and whether she should do an earthquake project next year. "Earthquakes are basically earth volcanoes," she explained with confident incorrectness. "I don't think that's scientifically accurate," Grant said. "It's my theory. I'm workshopping it." They got home late, and Mia was asleep before her head hit the pillow, still clutching her honorable mention ribbon. Ava helped Grant carry in the volcano project, carefully navigating it through the doorway. "Garage or basement?" she asked. "Garage. She'll want to keep working on it." He held the door open. Thanks for coming tonight. I know school events aren't exactly thrilling. Are you kidding? That was fascinating. Did you hear the kid with the potato battery trying to explain electron flow? I did. He was very confident and very wrong. They laughed, and Ava realized how comfortable she'd become with him. How easy it was to stand in his garage at 10 o'clock at night, discussing middle school science projects. We're getting good at this, she said. At what? Being partners, being a team. She looked at him directly. Mia was right. We are getting better at being married even if it's not a real marriage. Grant was quiet for a moment. Then he said, what if the line between real and fake isn't as clear as we think? What if we're actually building something legitimate, just not in the traditional way? I don't know what that would look like. Neither do I, but I'm curious to find out. There was something in his voice that made Ava's pulse quicken slightly. Not attraction exactly, but recognition. They were partners in this strange arrangement, yes, but maybe they were becoming something else too. Something neither of them had a name for yet. The custody hearing date arrived with brutal inevitability, appearing on the calendar like a deadline Ava had been dreading without quite admitting it. 3 days away, then 2, then suddenly it was the night before and Grant was pacing the living room while Ava and Mia pretended to watch a movie. You should sit down, Ava finally said. You're making me nervous. I am nervous. But he sat, running his hands through his hair. Tomorrow determines everything. We're ready, Ava said with more confidence than she felt. We've done everything we can. The next morning dawned gray and cold, the kind of January day that felt like it might never get fully light. They drove to the courthouse in tense silence, Mia in the back seat with her grandmother, Grant's hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. It's going to be okay, Dad, Mia said quietly. I know, sweetheart. But he didn't know. None of them did. The courtroom was smaller than Ava expected, more like a conference room than the dramatic spaces she'd seen on television. The Rowans sat on one side with their lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman in an expensive suit. Grant and Ava sat on the other with David, Grant's attorney, who'd spent the past week preparing them for every possible question. And then the judge entered and everything became terrifyingly real. Judge Helena Vasquez was in her late 50s with steel gray hair and an expression that gave away nothing. She settled behind the bench, opened a file that Ava assumed contained every detail of their lives, and surveyed the room with the practiced neutrality of someone who'd presided over too many custody battles. We're here today regarding the petition filed by Robert and Linda Rowan for guardianship of their granddaughter, Mia Grace Hale, Judge Vasquez said. Mr. Hale, Mrs. Hale, thank you for being here. Ava's stomach clenched at being called Mrs. Hale. It still didn't feel like her name. The Rowan's attorney, a woman named Christine Valdez, stood with the fluid confidence of someone who knew she had ammunition. Your Honor, my clients are seeking guardianship based on substantial concerns about the stability and appropriateness of the child's current living situation. Mr. Hale, while clearly devoted to his daughter, has demonstrated a pattern of impulsive decision-making that raises serious questions about his judgment. Grant's jaw tightened, but he remained silent as David had instructed. Specifically, Valdez continued, Mr. Hale married a woman 22 years his junior less than 6 weeks ago, a woman he had never met before his financial arrangement with her family. The marriage occurred with extraordinary haste, precisely timed to coincide with these custody proceedings. We believe this demonstrates not stability, but rather a calculated manipulation of the court's standards. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Ava felt heat creep up her neck. Calculated manipulation. That's exactly what it was, even if the reasons were more complex than Valdez was presenting. Judge Vasquez looked at David. Counselor? David stood, composed and ready. Your Honor, my client's marriage to Ava Monroe, now Ava Hale, is entirely legitimate and reflects his commitment to building a stable, loving home for his daughter. The timing may have been expedited due to these proceedings, but that doesn't invalidate the relationship. Mr. and Mrs. Hale are building a life together, one that centers on Mia's well-being and happiness. We'll see about that, Valdez said coolly. Your Honor, I'd like to call Ava Hale to the stand. Ava's heart stopped. They'd known this might happen, but she'd hoped. Objection, David said quickly. The petitioners haven't established grounds for hostile examination of. I'm not being hostile, Valdez interrupted smoothly. I simply want to understand the nature of this marriage and whether it provides the stability that Mr. Hale claims. Surely Mrs. Hale can answer a few straightforward questions about her relationship with her husband. Judge Vasquez studied Ava for a long moment. I'll allow it. Mrs. Hale, please take the stand. Ava stood on legs that felt like water. Grant reached out as she passed, squeezed her hand briefly, a gesture of support that felt genuine despite everything. She walked to the witness stand, was sworn in, and sat in the chair that suddenly felt like an electric chair. Valdez approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mrs. Hale, how long have you known your husband? About 2 months, Ava said, keeping her voice steady. And when did he propose? We discussed marriage about 6 weeks ago. Discussed? Valdez repeated. That's an interesting word choice. Was it romantic? Did he get down on one knee, declare his love? Objection, David said. Relevance? I'm establishing the nature of this relationship, Your Honor. Overruled. Answer the question, Mrs. Hale. Ava took a breath. No, it wasn't like that. It wasn't. Grant and I entered into our marriage with clear understanding of what we were both looking for. A partnership, a stable home for Mia, mutual respect. How practical, Valdez said. And what were you looking for specifically, besides a home for a child who isn't yours? The words stung, but Ava had prepared for this. I was looking for independence, for a way to finish my education and build a life separate from my parents' expectations. Grant offered me that opportunity while I offered him and Mia stability and support. So it was a transaction. It was an arrangement that benefited both parties, Ava said carefully. Like any marriage, really. People marry for lots of reasons: love, companionship, financial security, family. Ours just started with honesty about what those reasons were. Valdez's smile sharpened. Let's talk about that honesty. You maintain separate bedrooms, correct? Ava felt Grant tense across the room. Yes. And you have no physical relationship. That's correct. How convenient for a marriage entered into solely for custody purposes. Objection! David was on his feet. Counsel is testifying, not questioning. Sustained, Judge Vasquez said. Ms. Valdez, ask questions. Valdez turned back to Ava. Mrs. Hale, do you love your husband? The courtroom went silent. Ava could feel everyone watching her. Grant, the Rowans, the judge. This was the moment. She could lie, say yes, play the role they'd been rehearsing. But Mia had asked for honesty, and somehow that promise felt more binding than any wedding vow. I care deeply about Grant and Mia, Ava said quietly. I respect Grant more than almost anyone I've known. I admire his dedication to his daughter, his integrity, his kindness. Am I in love with him the way people are in love in movies? No, but I'm committed to our partnership, to our family, to building something real together. And I think that matters more than romantic love. Valdez pounced. So you admit this isn't a real marriage? I admit it's not a traditional marriage, Ava corrected, but it's real in the ways that count. We share a home, share responsibilities, share a commitment to Mia's well-being. We trust each other. We're building a life together. Those things are real. Life together, Valdez repeated skeptically. Tell me, Mrs. Hale, how does your husband take his coffee? It was such a small question, so trivial, but Ava saw the trap. It was designed to show she didn't know the intimate details of Grant's life. Black with 2 sugars in the morning, Ava said clearly. None after lunch because it interferes with his sleep. He makes it in the French press, not the drip machine, and he uses the blue mug his mother gave him for Christmas. He drinks it while reading the news on his tablet, usually standing at the kitchen counter because he says sitting makes him feel like he's wasting time. She watched Valdez's expression flicker with surprise. Across the room, Grant was staring at her with an unreadable expression. Ava continued, gaining confidence. He works best in the morning, loses focus around 3, and takes a walk to reset. Sans ski. You've memorized his routines, she said dismissively. That doesn't prove intimacy. It proves I pay attention, Ava said. It proves I care enough to notice, and it proves we actually live together as partners, not strangers occupying the same house. Valdez tried several more angles, asking about finances, about Ava's plans for the future, about whether she intended to have children with Grant. Ava answered each question as honestly as she could without sabotaging their case. Yes, they had a joint bank account. Yes, she planned to finish her degree while living with Grant and Mia. No, they hadn't discussed children because they were focused on the family they already had. Finally, Valdez dismissed her, and Ava returned to her seat on shaking legs. Grant's hand found hers under the table, squeezed it tight. "You did well," David murmured. But Ava wasn't sure. She'd told the truth, or close enough, but had it been enough? Valdez called Grant next, and Ava watched him take the stand with the same careful control he brought to everything. She'd seen him stressed, exhausted, worried, but never rattled. Even now, facing questions designed to dismantle his case, he remained steady. "Mr. Hale, why did you get married so quickly after your wife's death?" Valdez asked. "Sarah passed away 14 months ago," Grant said quietly. "That's not quick. That's a lifetime when you're grieving. And I didn't marry Ava to replace Sarah or to fill some void. I married her because Mia needed more stability than I could provide alone, and Ava could offer that. So you used this young woman to strengthen your custody case." "I offered her a partnership that benefited us both," Grant corrected. "Ava needed independence from a difficult family situation. I needed help building a stable home for my daughter. We found a solution that worked for both of us." "How noble," Valdez said dryly. "And when this custody matter is resolved, will you still need her, or will she become inconvenient?" Grant's eyes hardened. "My marriage to Ava isn't contingent on this hearing. We've built a home together. She's part of Mia's life now, part of our family. That doesn't end just because a judge makes a ruling." "Even though your arrangement has a 2-year timeline?" Ava's breath caught. "Yes. He worked from home so he could be available for Mia. Yes, his mother helped when he needed it, but she lived in Seattle. Yes, he'd made mistakes in his grief, pushed too hard to maintain normalcy when he should have sought help sooner. But he'd learned, adjusted, built a life that worked." "And you believe this life is better for Mia than what my clients could provide?" Valdez asked. "The Rowans are good people," Grant said. "They love Sarah, and they love Mia. But this is Mia's home. These are her friends, her school, her life. The Rowans want to uproot her and move her across the country to fill the hole Sarah's death left in their lives. That's not about Mia's best interests. That's about their grief. And I understand that grief, but I won't let it cost my daughter everything she knows." It was the most emotion Grant had shown, and Ava saw Judge Vasquez lean forward slightly, paying close attention. Valdez called character witnesses, the Rowans themselves, who spoke about their concerns with genuine love and worry that was hard to dismiss. They described Grant's exhaustion in the months after Sarah's death, his struggle to maintain normalcy, Mia's nightmares and anxiety. They painted a picture of a father doing his best but drowning, and a child who needed more than he could give. "We just want what's best for Mia," Linda Rowan said, her voice breaking. "She's all we have left of our daughter. We can give her everything, the best schools, a stable home, family support. Robert is retired, I work part-time. We can dedicate ourselves to raising her properly." It was compelling, and Ava felt a flicker of doubt. Maybe the Rowans were right. Maybe Mia would be better off with them. But then David called Mia to the stand. "Your Honor," Valdez objected immediately, "the child is 8 years old. She shouldn't be subjected to—" "She's asked to speak," David said, multiple times. "She has opinions about her own life, and I believe the court should hear them," Judge Vasquez considered. "I'll allow brief testimony. But keep it gentle, counselors." Mia walked to the stand in her neat purple dress and white cardigan, her glasses slightly crooked. She looked so small in the witness chair, her feet not quite touching the floor. But when she raised her hand to be sworn in, her voice was clear and steady. David approached her with visible gentleness. "Mia, can you tell the judge where you want to live?" "With my dad," Mia said immediately. "In our house." "Why?" "Because it's my home. My room has my stuff and my friends live near me, and I know where everything is. I don't want to leave." "What about your grandparents' house? Have you visited there?" "Yes, it's nice, but it's not mine." Mia looked at the Rowans, and her expression was complicated, love and guilt and determination mixed together. "Grandma and Grandpa Rowan are really nice. I love them, but they want me to be like my mom was, and I'm not her. I'm me. And Dad gets that. He lets me be me." "Can you explain what you mean?" Mia thought for a moment. "Grandma Rowan wants me to take ballet and piano and wear dresses all the time. She says that's what my mom liked. But I like science and soccer and jeans. Dad says I can be whoever I want, that Mom would want that too, but Grandma doesn't understand. What about Ava? David asked. How do you feel about her living with you? Mia's face brightened. Ava's great. She helps me with homework and she doesn't treat me like I'm stupid. She knows about real things, not just kid stuff, and she's teaching me about environmental science, which is really cool. Does she feel like family to you? Yeah, Mia said simply. Not like a mom. I have a mom. She's just dead, but like, I don't know, like someone who's supposed to be there. Someone I can trust. Valdez stood for cross-examination, but her expression was softer now. Even she seemed aware of how delicate this was. Mia, do you understand why your grandparents are worried about you? She asked gently. Because I had nightmares after Mom died, Mia said matter-of-factly. And I was sad a lot. And Dad was sad too, so they thought he couldn't take care of me. Are you still having nightmares? Sometimes, but not as much. My therapist says that's normal. Your therapist? Dr. Martinez. I see her twice a week. She helps me talk about feelings and stuff. Mia paused. Grandma and Grandpa don't think I should need therapy. They said if I just stayed busy and didn't think about sad things, I'd feel better. But that's not how it works. Valdez seemed to struggle with her next question. Finally, she asked, if you could choose anywhere to live, where would it be? Home, Mia said immediately, with Dad and Ava. That's where I belong. There wasn't much more to ask after that. Valdez tried a few more gentle questions, but Mia's position was unshakable. She wanted to stay with her father. She wanted to stay home. Judge Vasquez dismissed her kindly, and Mia walked back to sit with Grant's mother, who put an arm around her shoulders. The rest of the hearing blurred together. Closing arguments, procedural discussions, legal precedents cited. Ava tried to focus, but her mind kept returning to Mia's testimony, that small, fierce declaration of what she wanted. The Rowans looked devastated, and Ava felt unexpected sympathy for them. They'd lost their daughter and were now watching their granddaughter slip away too. Finally, Judge Vasquez called for a recess. I need time to review all the evidence and testimony, she said. This is a complex situation with valid concerns on both sides. I'll issue my written decision within 30 days. 30 days. A month of waiting to learn if their performance had been convincing enough. They filed out of the courtroom in silence. The Rowans left quickly, Linda crying into her husband's shoulder. Grant stood in the hallway looking shell-shocked. You did everything you could, David said. The testimony was strong. Mia was incredible. Now we wait. 30 days, Grant said hollowly. Could be less. Vasquez is usually prompt. David packed his briefcase. Go home. Try to maintain normalcy for Mia. I'll call as soon as I hear anything. The drive home was quiet. Mia fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the emotional weight of the day. Grant's mother had taken her own car, giving them space. It was just the three of them again, their strange little family. I'm sorry, Grant said finally, for putting you through that. Valdez was brutal. She was doing her job, Ava said, and I knew what I was signing up for. Did you? He glanced at her. Because I'm not sure I did. I thought this would be straightforward. Legal arrangement, clear terms, mutual benefit. But it's become something else. Something more complicated. What do you mean? Grant pulled into their driveway, turned off the engine. In the back seat, Mia stirred but didn't wake. I mean, what you said in there was true, he said quietly. We have built something real. I know your routines too, how you take your coffee with oat milk and vanilla on bad days, how you organize your notes by color, how you bite your thumbnail when you're concentrating. I know you check on Mia before you go to bed even though I've already done it. I know you're terrified of failing at this, but show up every day anyway. Ava felt her throat tighten. Grant, I'm not saying I'm in love with you, he interrupted. I'm still grieving Sarah. I probably will be for a long time, but you're not just a contract to me anymore. You're someone I trust, someone I rely on, someone who's become part of my daughter's life in a way I didn't expect. And if Vasquez rules against me, if I lose Mia, it won't just be my failure, it'll be our failure. You're in this now, all the way. I know, Ava whispered. I've known for a while. They sat in the car, the engine ticking as it cooled, and Ava realized how far they'd come from that first meeting in her father's study. How much had changed in 2 months? How what started as a transaction had evolved into something she couldn't quite name but felt deeply in her bones. "We should get her inside," Grant said finally. "She needs to sleep in her own bed." He carried Mia upstairs while Ava held the doors, and together they got her into pajamas without fully waking her. It was a practice routine now, comfortable in its familiarity. Downstairs, Grant poured 2 glasses of whiskey, and they sat in front of the fire that had become their default gathering place. "What happens if we lose?" Ava asked the question neither wanted to voice. "I don't know," Grant admitted. "I'll appeal if I can, but if Vasquez determines the Rowans can provide better stability, the appeals process could take months, and Mia would be with them the whole time. She'd be devastated. She'd be destroyed." His voice cracked slightly. "I can't let that happen, Ava. I can't." "You won't," Ava said with more confidence than she felt. "Vasquez saw Mia. She heard what she wants. That has to count for something." "In theory, yes, but family court is complicated. Vasquez could decide that what Mia wants isn't what Mia needs. That the Rowans can provide things I can't. Financial security, extended family, a traditional 2-parent household that isn't built on a contract." "We're not just a contract anymore," Ava said firmly. "You said it yourself. We've built something real." "Have we?" Grant looked at her directly. "Or have we just gotten very good at pretending?" It was the question that had been haunting Ava for weeks. Where was the line between performance and authenticity? At what point had acting like a family become actually being a family? "I don't think it matters," she said finally. "Real or pretend, we're here. We show up. We care. That's what counts." Grant was quiet for a long time, staring into the fire. Then he said, "Sarah used to say that marriage was choosing the same person every day. Not falling in love once, but making the choice to stay, over and over. I never understood what she meant until now. We didn't fall in love, you and I, but we're making the choice. Every morning when we get up and do this again. That's its own kind of real." Ava felt tears prick her eyes. "Yeah," she whispered. "It is." They finished their whiskey in silence, the fire burning low. Outside, snow began to fall again, covering everything in white. A fresh start or just concealment? Ava still wasn't sure which. The waiting began that night and stretched into days, then weeks. Life continued with surreal normalcy. Mia went to school, worked on her science projects, had playdates with friends who knew nothing about custody battles or contract marriages. Ava attended her online classes, wrote papers, slowly built the degree she'd put on hold. Grant worked from his office, took calls, designed systems Ava still didn't fully understand. They were a family waiting for a verdict, living in the space between hope and fear. 2 weeks after the hearing, Ava found Mia sitting on her bed, staring at a photograph of her mother. "Hey," Ava said softly from the doorway. "You okay?" Mia shrugged. "I miss her." "I know. She always said the best people were the ones who showed up when it was hard. You showed up." Ava sat beside Mia, and they looked at Sarah's photograph together, a beautiful woman with Mia's smile and an expression that suggested she didn't suffer fools. "Tell me about her," Ava said. "Something the Rowans don't know." Mia's face lit up. "She could whistle really loud, like so loud it hurt your ears."